Since we just changed.
Hold on a second. 4 is quorum. That's not 7.
4 is more than half. Most confusing. Get out my phone if we need that. Can we look at your shirt? Count the number of slices.
Both hands.
I'll see somebody's twice.
Most days.
Okay.
Richard is coming. He'll be here in about 10 minutes, but since we have 4
Okay. Yeah.
All right, we will call to order the Bricktown Urban Design Committee meeting at 9:02. Paula, would you mind reading the roll, or do we have a guest with us today? Or okay. All right, new staff member.
Brent Wall,
Here.
Jonathan Dodson, Kasha Egan,
Present.
Omar Curry,
Present.
Richard McCown, Avis Scaramucci,
Here.
Sandino Thompson. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We need to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion for approval of minutes passes. Item 3, cases withdrawn. We do not have any this month. Item 4, continuance requests. We do not have any. Item 5, the consent docket. We do not have any. Item 6, item A, BCA 17-00028. This is the application to construct an elevated ADA ramp in Bricktown.
Yes, this item was continued from your meeting on February 14th. We, as staff, raised the issue and brought it forward to the committee because we had some concerns about one of the 2 proposed ADA ramps at the bridge over the canal. And the one we're most concerned with is on the south side of the canal, east side of Oklahoma Avenue. And you may recall that at our last meeting we discussed this to some extent. And there were a number of questions that committee members had regarding the potential to do an alternative design that would not impact the visual connectivity from the street to the canal. And we, unfortunately, at that time did not have any representation from the Public Works Department to respond to those questions. Today we do, and turn it back over to the committee for any questions that you may have of me.
Well, I have a question. Who am I speaking to? Oh, okay.
Greg Little with City of Oklahoma City Public Works.
Thank you for coming today.
Yep.
I'm just curious. It would seem really there could be other ways to not block this view of the canal and to cut off some of the areas that you're cutting off. And I was wondering if there would be a possibility for someone, an architect, to look at this and make some suggestions on maybe different designs.
So with what this project was in the limited design area that we had with our engineer, Brett Cabness, with Cabness Engineering, so we had him design this in the best possible way in the limited area that we had. And so to meet the ADA access and to limit the view obstruction, this was pretty much the best route that we could come up with. I don't know, architecturally speaking, how to design it differently in order for it to work in the way that it is designed. I'm not sure if there's
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. And so that, I guess that was our question, was could there be my limited knowledge of such is that engineers are the people that make certain that the structure works.
Correct.
And architects are the ones that come up with the idea for the structure.
Sure.
So it seems to me that this project has, over the years, brought, I believe at last time I checked on it, an average of 100,000 people into Oklahoma City per year. And it's a great example of a public-private partnership.
Sure.
And I just would like to be thoughtful on this simply because we all understand that once something is done, most likely that's the way it will be for some time to come. And it certainly would not be that I'm not appreciative of improvements, because as a Bricktown property owner, I'm most appreciative, and certainly this is a project, the ADA issues, as well as just moms with carriages, with babies. I mean, there's a long list of reasons why we need to improve our situation, and it's something that I have been concerned about for a long time. It doesn't send the right message to welcome guests to our city, and certainly not into Bricktown.
Yeah.
So I would never want anyone to think that I'm not appreciative. I'm just asking if there would be a possibility that architecturally this could be reviewed to see if there would be any chance, opportunity to improve what is presented.
May I have our engineer address us?
Okay.
Good morning. I'm
Good
Brett
morning.
Cabanis with Cabanis Engineering, 333 12th Avenue Southeast in Norman. Your comments are very spot on. We do want to have a very aesthetically pleasing improvement to this program. The challenge here was more from a structural standpoint than alternatives that we could look at. We also wanted to stay within the limits of the existing public right-of-way, where we would not infringe on some of the additional property owners. As you know, in this location here, the photo at the very top is the non-functioning pedestrian lift. We want to maintain that access in that corridor because it is an ADA compliant corridor once you get from the sidewalk at street level to the upper level of the sidewalk. We wanted to maintain as much as possible the outdoor seating area for the restaurant that has that location. So really, we were very limited from a structural engineering standpoint on how we could accomplish this, not affecting the lower level as well. Now, the ramp on what would be the northwest corner opposite of this one, it is a little more forgiving, where we were be able to pull it out a little bit farther away from the building and match the aesthetics that are currently there. We have looked at this. The ramp does mimic and mirror the existing ramps that are adjacent to the west side of the Kingman building. It mimics the ramp on the north side of the canal on the east side of Oklahoma as well. The railing will be the same as you see out there today as well, but really more from a structural standpoint, and this was the best option that we investigated several months ago when we started looking at this. So we did take into consider the aesthetics, but the primary goal is we want to be ADA compliant. This is the recommendation from the ADA audit that was done on Bricktown back in 2014, I believe. And this was one of the primary things that we had to be able to get compliant to get people from the street level to the upper level.
Yes, I see that every day.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would have to assume that the city at the time of construction of this canal felt the best option was the lift. the elevators.
I cannot speak for the city forefathers that
Well,
designed
I only say
this.
that because they're here.
Yes.
I mean, they're in existence.
Yes, and the design, I'm sorry, the design was done really pre-ADA compliant guidelines. It was done, the design was done in 1998, it was constructed in 1999. The ADA guidelines really did not take effect until after 2000. They've been updated since then in 2000. I believe 2007, maybe even 2009, they've been updated since that point in time, which these plans are compliant
Yes,
with.
I appreciate your comments, but the truth of the matter is, I believe if those elevators work, they would be in compliance today, would they not?
They would be, but they're an extreme maintenance issue
I know.
for the parks.
So my question, what I'm trying to get to is, has there been a consideration on rethinking a new lift or elevator? What kind of expenditures involved? We know that that works because it's worked before. And is there consideration on best practices in other locations, what other people have done? I don't know how much money it takes to do all of these things.
Correct.
But the elevators that we have, for many reasons, have not worked. But I have to believe that there are ones that do. I'm not an expert on that. I'm asking you. I hope someone has discovered all of the possibilities.
The directive really came from Public Works and the Parks and Rec Department for the change from ramps, or change from the pedestrian lifts here to the ramps. The pedestrian lifts, as you mentioned earlier, are very difficult, if not unusable, by mothers with strollers, whereas a ramp such as this is now accessible to those folks as well. The ramp handles multiple people. It is not strictly an ADA person's use will be this. Many people, patrons, as you know, will utilize these ramps as opposed to the steps during...
If I said that mothers with carriages could not use the lift, that's not what I meant to say.
And that was my interpretation, is the lift that is out there today, for a mother to put a stroller into that lift that you see there, is not large enough. The lift is strictly a wheelchair-bound person, and very narrow and very small. I don't think it would be, I don't have exact measurements on strollers because my kids are a little older now.
It's just the lift is so much more aesthetically pleasing, and I was wondering if it had been a consideration, a different type of lift that would be easily maintained in the environment.
We did, in our preliminary engineering study, take into consideration replacing the lift. Now, we did not put that in perspective in a written report because it was very early on that the Parks Department did not want to continue to maintain this because it is expensive. It is a mechanical operation in an open environment, and it is not trustworthy as a ramp. And so the directive really came down from Parks and Rec and Public Works that they did not want to keep the pedestrian lift. Did that address your question?
So,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
so much of the trouble with the lifts that are here has to do with their open to the elements and moisture getting condensation occurring on the control panel. It is very expensive to replace, but all of that can be fixed, and an alternative option that might be more aesthetically pleasing and make the outdoor dining facility more useful would be some type of cover, canopy, and or protection from wind-blown rain events. I mean, there is another alternative to protect the electronics and to make these things to where they're not constantly breaking. And I've got a lot of experience with that, with a couple of elevators that
were open to the elements, and the elevator inspectors, referencing back to these lifts in Bricktown, is the main reason I had to go back and retrofit a building to add a whole bunch of rain screen elements, etc. So they don't make a UL-listed watertight elevator necessarily.
No.
That's cost-effective, but there are things that can be done, and certainly all of the elevators in Bricktown, which I have never seen one of them work, even the big ones that
Yes.
Mother with Stroller gets into. And when you think about the extraordinary asset that is the Bricktown Canal, that, many things have changed. If we went and tried to permit this thing today under the environmental rules, given the history of industrial use in Bricktown, we'd probably never get it done. So we've got this amazing thing that we've invested in. It's one of the original MAPS projects, and looking for a big, what are we? We're a big league city.
Big league city, yes.
Are we choosing to do a big league first-class approach that is an investment for multiple generations, that, we're going to look back on this and say, this group did this right and built on the whole Bricktown Canal as an overall asset. The ramp that's proposed on the west side of Oklahoma Avenue certainly probably closes off the opportunity to put a proper elevator that would later go down and serve the lower story of the ACM property, the redevelopment of the Cholinos property, which was one of the only places that you could get down to the canal and have dinner. And, foreclosing that future opportunity, and then other development along the canal as the lower level under Zio's, certainly a future hotel on the south side of the canal. There's much development still to come in our canal. And when you look at the extraordinary success of the San Antonio Canal, they've been at it for 50 years. We're just barely getting started. And these kinds of things are very hard to undo later. I definitely feel like we're making a decision that's going to be very disruptive. I'm friends with the guy that has Yucatan taco stand. You've got a lamp that's got to be relocated. It's going to be disruptive to the Bourbon Street down below, sawing all that stuff off, and then I don't, however long, no one's patio is going to be usable during this.
And we understand all those comments, and we greatly appreciate it. And again, we do want something that is aesthetically pleasing, and hence the reason why we try to match with the existing ramps and the architecture of those structures that are already out there. Again, we have the ability now to get people from the street level to the upper level to utilize those businesses that would be more difficult. The taco stand that you mentioned now, ADA compliance in an ADA route along the sidewalk is virtually non-existent. They have to go all the way back around over to, I believe that is Joe Carter Avenue on the east end, and work their way back just to get to their location. So this is an improvement. We do understand the opportunity to make it aesthetically pleasing as we can. The comment about enclosing the existing structure and even talking about enclosing the patio and making that aesthetically pleasing, I don't want to misconstrue your comments, but is that an opportunity to expend public funds for a private facility? And I don't think that's what your question was earlier. Is that correct? Okay.
That's not a private facility that we're talking about.
The patio?
The elevator is what we're talking about.
Yes, the elevator, yes.
We're just trying to put dollars in on improving
Yes, I misconstrued his comments about making that patio an aesthetically pleasing area if we were to enclose it as well. That was my mistake, I'm sorry.
If you enclose the elevator and you did it in a way that had a big enough overhang, no doubt, people will find shade and protection from the wind.
Sure.
And those are positive things, and they cause people to use public space more, eat, drink, pay sales tax, use the canal,
Yes.
come to our city. It all works together. So sure, it's for the benefit of a good revenue-generating business in Bricktown. I'm not proposing at all that
Okay.
we subsidize it, but I am certainly proposing that we don't do things that damage our entertainment retail. We've been at that for quite some time now, constructing this amazing streetcar. I'm a huge fan of the streetcar, and everybody's getting a big punch in the nose. This is going to give two businesses, and there aren't that many businesses on the canal.
Right.
It's going to give them a big punch in the nose, and I don't feel good about it at all.
And we completely understand that, and we've tried to schedule things around their normal working hours. We've tried to schedule things around having everything available on the weekends open. There's no construction during the weekends. We've limited the contractor to being closed at shutting down his construction at 11 a.m. on Friday afternoon, and does not allow him to start construction until 8 a.m. Monday afternoon. We're very cognizant of the businesses through here. The previous phase one of this work, that was the improvements to the lower canal section as well, went very smoothly. The contractor did a very good job of communicating with the business owners and such down through there. So the disruption is there, but we do have provisions in the construction documents, in the plans, that the businesses will maintain access at all times during this. Is it an inconvenience during construction? Absolutely. There's no way around that.
I think all of us probably have our own concerns. I'm a little bit in the anti-elevator camp. It wasn't that long ago that I had a stroller, and I became very aware of ADA ramps and curb cuts that weren't really meant for my stroller but happened to be very convenient. So I can see where the ramp would be a good asset if it's done correctly. Having gone down there and walked around with the plans in my hand, I understand the challenge of what you're trying to pull off. It's not an easy thing to do. And so I think that's where a lot of this is coming from, is just trying to really think through how we do it, because we do see the challenge in it. The concern I have is just that what was submitted to us was, pretty technical in nature. We have a lot of plan view, but we don't have a lot of elevation or even kind of the pretty stuff that we can really wrap our mind around to see how what you're proposing would look in place. So I would feel better if I knew more what the supports look like, how they're going to attach to the ground, what happens to the vegetation beneath the ramp, because there are some plants and such underneath there now. So personally, I feel like I just need a little bit of a bigger picture of what's being proposed. I can envision it a little bit in my mind, but I don't know if that's enough for the group to make a really good decision right now.
For the most part, and I understand your question. For the most part, the ramp will basically be cantilevered out from the existing structure, particularly along the Oklahoma Avenue alignment as you go farther, and now as you start to turn east and go up to where the elevator lift stops now at the upper level. Again, that'll be cantilevered out in the most part. Yes, it'll be cantilevered out. Whereas on the opposite side, we do have columns that go down to the lower level of the canal on the northwest ramp over by the music building.
I have a quick question. Looking at that picture, on the right side of the picture, what's the intention of the edge of that ramp to the sidewalk, to the existing sidewalk?
To the sidewalk, there'll be a concrete barrier wall right there.
Just a wall?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where's the concrete barrier wall? On
Barrier
where the
wall.
existing railings are currently?
It will be along the side, if you were looking at that photo right there. Yes, thank you very
It'll be
much.
along
That
the
along
side.
there, right there.
Oh. And that would be, would it be full height, obviously, because it'd have to be guardrail height, so no one can
As it
fall over
goes
it?
up, it will match the wall or the ramp elevation as it goes up.
Oh, the ramp wall. Okay,
Yes,
so the
the ramp.
hand railing at the elevation that we're currently seeing would remain, and you're saying you'd have
We're
a concrete...
rebuilding the steps there along with the handrail as well.
So where the existing sidewalk is underneath the ramp, where the ramp basically overlaps the sidewalk, what is that void? Are you taking out that part of the sidewalk or infilling it?
We'll infill it, yes.
My measurement of it, I believe that sidewalk's 8 foot in width right now.
Correct.
Your plans had almost no dimensions on them. And I think when you're finished, that sidewalk will get down to about 6 feet in width. Is that,
In that area, we should still be a minimum of 6 feet. I can't tell right off the top of my head where the plans are.
It's like 7 feet,
Yes.
what
Well, it's 5'7".
one of these sheets shows.
The plans show it as 5'7".
Yes, 5'7".
So to my question, I think there was a concern brought up that you had mentioned, Richard, about this is taking up space of, like seating space for the restaurants below, or is this going into unoccupied, unusable space currently?
It's currently unoccupied, unusable space. Again, it'll be cantilevered out from the existing edge of the building.
Sure, once the ramp is built, but the question is currently, is this usable space by those restaurants for conducting business?
No.
I believe that, I don't go to Bourbon Street very often, but I believe right now their patio is in use right underneath the patio
Underneath,
that
yes, it is.
serves Yucatan Taco Stand.
It is.
So however long we've got it torn up, sawing off and removing one of the columns that holds up the corner of that, et cetera. I mean, it's no small feat to go,
We're not removing any columns.
okay? That it's going to be disruptive to both restaurants. Are you saying it won't be?
No, absolutely not. I
Okay,
stated
that was
we
the point I was trying to
Yeah,
make.
absolutely not. We know it's going to be disruptive, and that's why we've gone to lengths to limit the contractor to when he can actually work, when he is scheduling and coordinating with the restaurant deliveries in the mornings to ensure that those businesses have access for patrons, they have access for their deliveries, and that on weekends, construction is not going on outside their patio or their restaurant.
So this railing, my thought as a property owner in Bricktown is that there are always minimum requirements, and my goal has always been to exceed minimum requirements on landscaping and on just amenities improvements. So if we were going to do a ramp, is there thought of maybe making it aesthetically a little more pleasing than existing ramps, instead of just matching?
Our intent is we want this ramp to blend in and not look like an afterthought. That was our intent. So we're trying to make the railing match the existing railing throughout the upper Bricktown area, all of the stuff that was improved in Phase 1 as well. Does this railing meet the minimum? I believe it actually goes beyond a little bit the minimum requirements for railing for an ADA compliant ramp.
Well, I would have to say that I'm not knowledgeable in that area. But in Bricktown's case, I believe the ramps that are in existence are afterthoughts. So we're just continuing the trend.
I would agree with you in this instance here. And again, it was staff's recommendation and our directive to us is after we started looking at the replacement cost for the pedestrian lifts and then the additional maintenance cost beyond that, staff did not want to incur that. They wanted ramps. And so it was then our challenge to how do we make this aesthetically pleasing, make it match the Bricktown area look and feel as well.
So staff would be Parks.
Parks, yes.
Thank you.
One last question, for me at least. On the north side of the ramp, what is supporting that channel?
Supporting the north side of the ramp, it is cantilevered out. It is cantilevered out with a bracing and structural beams that come out. If you happen to have a set of the plans, and
I'm looking at the framing plan, but I can't see any. All I see is one supporting beam, basically.
Okay.
Are you talking about the 10 by 12s?
Pardon me?
Are you talking about the 10 by 12s that are?
If you look at sheet S12, section 8.
We don't have sheet S12.
Okay.
We have sheets, let's see.
S11?
Yeah, we have 9, 10, 11, 2, and that would be it. And then, I think still didn't understand. On the side for this particular ramp, this is the only one in question at the moment, when we're abutting to the existing that will be partially demoed out, the sidewalk above, you're saying on the sidewalk side, is there there's a concrete curb or guardrail height that you're constructing?
There's an existing abutment wall that was built with the original bridge over the canal along Oklahoma Avenue. It basically was square shaped. That's what we're tying back into with this structural.
So it's a solid wall on the...
It's the one that's out there today, yes. Yeah, we're not constructing that.
Okay, so I'm looking at S12.
Yes.
That section that's on section 8, it's talking about the east ramp, not the west one.
Yes, that is correct. That's the east ramp. That's the one in question. That's the one in picture.
Okay. I was looking at the east side of the river, but so these columns, excuse me, the columns the new steel columns, they're new.
Yes.
So personally, I'd like to see an elevation of looking at that wall that you mentioned, that concrete wall, because I'm not seeing how that integrates with these columns, because these brackets that are cantilevering the ramp.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we can get you a rendering to look at that.
Brent, does that also satisfy your request for?
Yeah, I think sheet S12 was the missing link in our package, so I think that will help. Yeah, and if there's any way that you could just give us a little more visual cue, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Be happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring it up, but I sent you guys all some conceptual sketches, and those were based on a delegation from the Oklahoma Urban Land Institute chapter decided to go visit our peer city, San Antonio. I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, specifically looking at how does San Antonio continue to develop their canal. And one of the things that came out of that trip was this re-examination of our canal. Certainly, Chad Huntington told Norm many stories of watching families go down the stairs with, a wheelchair bound or somebody in some kind of a medical boot or something like that, scooting on their butt down steps to get to ride the boats. And of course, you got to get back up that same way. And I think ADA is very important. One of the things that you will notice looking at the San Antonio system is there's a lot of stairways that connect going down, and those were put in place prior to 2000, prior to the adoption of ADA. And as you go into the Pearl District, which is new at the far end, the most recent extension of the San Antonio Canal, you do have these long switchback ramps, and I'm a big fan of ramps as well because I remember pushing strollers. But we don't have room here like they do at the Pearl District, that lots of space. We're not built right up to the canal. So in San Antonio, what you see a lot where they have built these staircases as afterthoughts to get people down to the canal level, they sort of fly out toward the canal. And of course, it's a set of stairs. You can walk under them, and there's no way to do an ADA ramp because of the grade required and spin it all the way down to the lower level of the canal. I say there's no way. It'd be a real mess and quite the corkscrew, and it would conflict with pedestrians and or boats. But the sketches I sent you guys had to do with an alternate idea of what if these things flew out and that you could see through them. Very often we use in our suburban greenbelt development the sidewalk as a way of leading your eye through the ground plane. And the ramp, rather than being this obstruction, this little wall that now raises up the number of feet you have to travel before you see down into the canal, the counter proposal would be to have the ramp lead your eye that direction out to the canal and have this long sweeping movement that comes out and over. It's just an idea, and I think it would need to be put in the hands of a gifted architect, given that it is an afterthought, not unlike our latest, icon, the pedestrian bridge over I-40, which was an alternate to building the park all the way over I-40. It could turn into something spectacular and fun as opposed to a utilitarian afterthought. That was all that was intended by that idea, is that there's several different things going on there in terms of leading the eye, using different principles of getting around to something else. Anyway, that's why I clearly took my time to draw it up. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. It had some intention behind it that we've been very successful with in our greenbelt development on the suburbs, working with very talented landscape architects to use pathways as as means for taking the eye places you want it to go.
And we certainly appreciate the time and thought put into that. We're in that kind of tricky situation where we're a recommend or approval body. I think we're heading down the path of asking for some additional information right now, which would mean a continuance of the case until next month so that we can get a little bit more information. That may give us a window of opportunity to engage the design team in the city and maybe provide a couple of alternatives for consideration. Ultimately, it's out of our hands unless it comes back to us for review, but I certainly don't think there's any harm in giving a recommendation for just a little bit more thought to potentially be put into this, if that sounds good to you all.
I have a question to staff. Is the northwest ramp already approved, and it's only this ramp in question?
Yeah, the northwest ramp was already approved as part of the administrative approvals because when we took a look at it, we took photos similar to the ones we've taken here for the southeast ramp. We were looking at it solely in the context of the guideline that we've raised in the staff report, and from our perspective, the shots that we took from Oklahoma looking west, the ramp proposed at the northwest corner did not impede the visual impact to the canal.
I'm not sure what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting some design review on this as well on our behalf, or what? Clarify a little bit, please, sir.
Right now, I'm suggesting that we continue the case until next month. We request from the design team some additional information, the additional structural sheet that we haven't seen, perhaps a rendering or some elevation information so that we can understand what's being proposed right now. And then perhaps in that time, a little bit of reconsideration and thought on how to maybe make this a little more aesthetically pleasing. Given that the other one has been approved, we don't have a lot of control over that. We may be able to treat this one ramp as something special. Maybe it has a place in the middle that's sort of out over the canal where you could stop in. It's a really great place to take a picture or something. I don't know, but the case that what we have control over right now is asking for more information on what they proposed. We do not have control over whether or not they give us anything in addition to what we requested. So if that sounds agreeable, I will. Okay. Does the applicant agree with my synopsis? You're okay with that? Okay, thank you.
Michael, may I request sheet S2 if you have it?
S2 was provided in the packet. I would request, I don't know if I'm even allowed to do this, but there's a detail on your S11 sheet that calls out 1A S2 and 1B S2.
But they're not on the S2.
On S2, there's not a designation between the two. Maybe it's just a ramp width difference for distinguishing the two from each other. But I think in S1, for me to look at it, and that might be where the rendering help or an elevation to show us some more detail on what it looks like as we're going down to the lower level. But I'm not really seeing, I can't see how this is interacting with the concrete wall below. So that's just a question I have, if you don't mind. More information.
Okay, so I'm asking for a motion to continue the case until next month, to the April 11th meeting, with the addition that we receive additional information on the structure of the ramp, some more graphic support to show exactly how the ramp would look in context to the urban environment in which it's going into, and potentially any other ideas that you may have that would help us understand exactly what it is you're proposing. So I would ask for a motion to continue.
I'll motion to continue.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right. All approve, or all in favor? Say aye.
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 All opposed, nay? Okay. We will see you all next month. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Item number 7, we did not have any items. Item 8, administrative approval report. We only had one item. Item B, we have Stuart Chai from the Public Works Department. He's going to give us a little bit of information on what is going to happen as far as pedestrian access and safety during construction.
Okay, I'm Stuart Chai, Oklahoma City Public Works Department from the Traffic Management Division.
Traffic management, thank you. Sorry.
So if you've got any particular questions relative to this subject matter, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, I asked Stuart here because at the end of the last meeting, people were asking about, what provisions are contractors asked to make when they're closing off streets, specifically when they're rerouting the pedestrian path. And Stuart, I think you have some guidelines that you give them when they submit their work plans.
Well, I'll just kind of briefly go over the work zone permitting process. It wasn't until a few years ago the city actually had a work zone permitting process. Since that was created, what we do is we will work with contractors, and we run a meeting every Wednesday morning at 10:30, in which case we will bring contractors that are bringing in proposals for street closures, sidewalk closures, things like that, which are going to affect transportation almost of any form. I mean, whether it's, vehicles, buses, pedestrian access, that sort of thing. One thing that the city does not require as part of the building permitting process is almost like a constructability plan, because we see a lot of applications that will come in. The designer will propose a design. They will show where a new facility is supposed to go, whether it's a public utility of some form or, like a large-scale building project. And because there are no constructability documents within the plans which would address things like material staging, delivery, crane locations, it's something that has to be worked out after the building permitting process is through and the actual construction is getting ready to begin. And what my division does is we coordinate that as best as possible, because we've got a myriad of projects. I mean, you can just look in the downtown area, the Bricktown area, and it's not just, for example, the streetcar that's working. There are projects that are going in along the streetcar route, and there are just a myriad of things that we're trying to keep balanced, trying to maintain as much access for everyone as much as possible. So as far as specific plans go that would accompany construction drawings, we don't get those. However, we do take the time to meet with builders and contractors and try and figure out how we are going to maintain access. Now, the level of plan detail that we get is not, since there's not a requirement for it to be included in building permit plans, it's something that we work out during the construction process. So I don't know if that gives you enough information to start. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have relative to this.
I think one of the reasons that this came up was as this new Renaissance Hotel begins, and there's construction or there's some height involved in building that building, there was hope that the street would not again have to be closed. The sidewalk, that there could be some protective measure. I think Gary Brooks did that down with the First National Building so that people could continue to use the sidewalk. Are things like that in the purview of your department?
We would certainly look at them, but like I said, since the city doesn't have a requirement regarding constructability, I mean, you can take, for example, like the Devon Tower. I mean, Sheridan Avenue was closed for well over a year just to allow the construction of that, and I don't believe that, that when the designers, when the the structural engineer and the architects and the landscape designers put together the total package for the work, there's not an overall look taken to how this is going to be built. Where is a contractor going to set a tower crane? Where are they going to take their deliveries? How are they going to maintain vehicular access or pedestrian access? So when that, I believe the building you're talking about is going in over at Oklahoma and Sheridan?
The corner of Oklahoma and Sheridan, yes.
Yeah. That will be one of those things that we will look at when a contractor comes in, because the first time we will see it will be if there are any utility projects associated with it. Other than that, as far as building permit applications go, my division isn't part of the building permit review process. We will look at applications that are headed towards Planning Commission with respect to rezoning, that sort of thing, and we will look at construction documents relative to roadway, water, sewer, drainage improvements. But as far as like an actual building goes, we don't review those, so it's
not really something that you are involved in. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That
not directly involved in, yes.
Okay.
And like the scaffolding work that was put in front of the First National Building,
yes.
Part of that was done afterwards, after they experienced
yes.
part of the facade coming off.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, ordinarily we'd like to see contractors be able to maintain that level of access for everyone, because there's a lot of places, especially in the downtown area. I mean, you can look at the West Village project over on Main Street. There are a lot of circuitous routes that pedestrians have to use just to get around the work zone, because contractors have closed the right-of-way in order to secure the work zone, to secure the building site, and also when they were doing things like applying a masonry veneer on the parking garages. And that forces pedestrians to basically cross the street multiple times just to try and navigate their way through a work zone. And right now we've got, part of the eastbound lanes of Sheridan are closed, Main Street are closed, because there's storm drain work that's going on adjacent to the 21C. And that's all relative to the Village West project as well. And so, these work zones that we get, it's not a function of being able to produce a single plan that will show you exactly what's going to go on during construction, because work zones are very dynamic. The nature of the work is always changing, because once a contractor closes a roadway or has to close a lane because they need it to operate cranes and take deliveries, there comes a point in time when the building's now been closed in and they can change the nature of the deliveries they're taking because they no longer require a crane.
I was mainly addressing just sidewalks. It's one thing to stop traffic flow, but if we are interested in pedestrian traffic, which certainly in Bricktown we are, that would be an avenue maybe to keep people, the comings and goings, regardless of whether the street is closed or not.
Oh, right.
So it's mainly
I agree
sidewalks.
Yeah, but like I said, the situation that we've encountered is that there will be times when a contractor is taking deliveries from the right-of-way, and they'll not want to have any pedestrian access next to their site, because the only place they can take a delivery, especially in the Bricktown area where there's no requirement for, surface parking or associated parking next to a building site, the only place where you can take a delivery is straight from the right-of-way, and the only way to get that safely across the right-of-way typically is to close a sidewalk, in which case that reroutes pedestrian traffic, and hopefully we've got adequate facilities on both sides of a roadway to make that possible, or we don't have another project going in on the opposite side of the roadway, which may make, getting through rather difficult. We try and do the best we can with the resources we have, but it's a daunting task.
For all of us, thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, do we have any comments from planning staff? No comments? Comments from committee members?
I do have one comment. I appreciate this morning all of you coming and having the ability to visit. It helps us do our job better. And whether we all agree or disagree, it's nice to have the opportunity to visit and to hear both sides. So thank you very much.
Yes, I would concur with that. We very much appreciate you being here and your time. All right, with that, our next meeting is scheduled for April 11th, and we are adjourned.